our ministers do not add value to our governance. That's the truth. And I'm not here talking about the current MPP administration. I refer to all administrations since 1993. The time has come for us to seriously introspect on this. And hasn't the time come for us to place in the Constitution an upper ceiling on the number of ministers of state that we should have? As I've already stated, cabinet ministers assist the president in the evolution of policies. That is according to Article 76 of the Constitution. All bills and agreements that are presented to Parliament are underpinned by governmental policy and principles, which the cabinet ministers propose to cabinet. So if you are not a cabinet minister, you are not part of the process of the evolution of policy. Where we are going as a nation is not sustainable. We are getting on a very slippery road in terms of monetizing our politics, both parliamentary elections and presidential elections. And I think that, as a matter of fact, my personal preference is with the Westminster type, where the prime ministers are much more accessible to us. One, and then in terms of expenditures, they spend far, far less in getting themselves elected from the constituencies, right? And that obligation to satisfy sponsors is much, much less. With that, we'll be able to deal with corruption. And then again, because the prime minister is a member of parliament, peer review should tell you that you can't be a prime minister when I know that before you became a prime minister, you had only one house. And 4 years after becoming a prime minister, you have 10 houses. My friend, where did you get it from? Any president appoints more than 5,000 officers into public office. We are still counting. This certainly, Professor Chairman, is a monarch that the Constitution has created. The rest of us citizens hold him in awe, and even when he strays, it is difficult to talk straight to him. This arrangement needs to be revisited. It cannot be good for our growth. It cannot be good for the growth of democracy.
Right. So that's Osei Mensah Bonsu. He's been in Parliament long enough, has sufficient experience. Maybe apart from Bagbing, I think there's none other in that Parliament that, you know, knows as much as he does. So, what is prompting him to now come forward and join the calls and the advocacy that has been going on for a while? Let's begin with Professor Bafo Adjumani. This is his area of comfort, and so when you listen to him across the issues he raises, are they doable? Will they give us an efficient government? Will they actually cut the corruption?
Thank you, Samson. Let me say that I'm very happy that somebody of his standing is now coming out publicly to express such very important sentiments about governance in the country. And you're right, Samson. In the 2000s, CDD and others, we've been raising these issues. And over the past few months, I've personally been raising issues about the size of government and all. So I'm happy that somebody like him coming to add his voice, for me, means that at least we are gaining some momentum in addressing these issues. Absolutely. And to add to that, just last Thursday or so, I read yesterday that the Speaker of Parliament also made an interesting statement, in a way chastising Ghanaians that we don't seem to even respect Parliament. Everything is the president, the president, the president. You remember that statement?
That's right.
That is a strong indication of a widening recognition of what the 92 Constitution has done for us. Look, I always give credit to the 92 Constitution for at least being resilient enough to bring us 30 years on this democratic journey. And I'm happy about that. But the Constitution is full of deficits, either because of how we rush to put it together, not thinking too much about our own history, our cultural traditions, forgetting that all constitutions in so-called democracies are built on something. And that something is the people's history, culture, and experiences. And I like making the quick distinction here. You see, democracy has two levels. The upper level, we call the principle or theoretical democracy, refers to those values that are universal. Freedom, liberties, justice, equalities, those are universal. You don't have to be black, white, or green to enjoy those things. That is there. But every society has a responsibility to reduce these theoretical, what you call the values, to a practical level. And that's what we call practice democracy. And that refers to the institutions and systems that you create based on your history and culture. So you ask yourself, when we were putting the 92 Constitution together, to what extent did they reflect even on our history from 57 to 92? Not to go, before then. What was there? What influenced them? Something. The idea of having 4-year tenure. What informed it? Because in Britain, there's no term limitation. You rule as long as the people want you. Once I think Chairman was referring to the parliamentary system, once the Conservatives decided Boris Johnson is no longer useful, they found a way after 2.5 years to get him out. That's their system. But if you are good to them, like Margaret Thatcher was there for 13 years. Angela Merkel in Germany, how many years was she there as Chancellor? 18 years. He just left barely a year and a half ago. So the point I'm making is that even the tenure of office is based on some reasoning that normally comes from their history and their culture. But we just say 4 years and second tenure. Why? Okay, so that's just one illustration. Then all the institutions we have created, the system we have created, what we are facing, something, is that, and I think the majority leader said it right, the Constitution has created what we call an imperial president. He used the term a monarchy. Imperial presidency. And somebody has said it so wisely, Samson, that our Constitution gives so much power for a good president not to need, but for a bad president to have. You understand that? A bad president with this Constitution, a rogue president, can run us into the ditch. And if you're a good president, you don't need all the powers that are given to you. But that's what we have. But when you are running the country, you are not running the country on the basis of somebody's personal idiosyncrasies. That's why we have the law, so we have the Constitution. So let's go back to the Constitution and see how we structure it. Now, coming to the size of government. He's right. I wasn't too much aware that there is an implicit limitation on the number of cabinet ministers. He said not less than 10 and not more than 19. But since this Fourth Republic, from Rawlings to the present, how many cabinet ministers do we have? Somebody could take us all the way to 120. Okay, you see?
All the ministers together. But
and that's, and again, anyway. So what we are saying is that, and I agree with him, the present trajectory for our national progress could be getting us to where we don't want to be if we don't reverse it. So he's talking about basically a constitutional reform. And that's something I wholeheartedly support. Because there are so many contradictions in the Constitution. You're a lawyer, you know what I'm talking about. Okay? So the size of government has been created without due regard to the resources available to back it up. You see, when we created additional 6 regions, It was good for those who clamored for it. And I think by and large, it refers to self-government in some form or shape. But what we forgot was that that was going to add to our expenditure. After every census, we go ahead and create more constituencies. Right? I hope after this letters, they are not going to come up with that.
No.
Well, we are hearing those party people that at a certain level, reasonable citizens don't take them serious, but within their parties, they are they are gods,
Yes.
so to speak. We are hearing them beginning to talk about the fact that there's a need to even break down some of the constituencies, a lot more. Even in Kumasi, the Ashanti region, that you need to break it down a lot more.
Bottom line, to increase.
Yes, to increase the number.
How?
Then they will come and say, we need a bigger parliament building, isn't it?
No.
So the expenditures. State creates institutions at will, forgetting that any institution you create require a piece of the national pie. So for me, I look at all this and wonder, or rather not surprised, that we have borrowed all the way to the ceiling. We cannot even borrow anymore. Now we need a bailout. So I'm saying, in addition to your corruption you made, I think the size of government and the way we operate it in itself is a major source of waste of our resources.
He's saying that we need a ceiling. But at the same time, he seems to sound as though the Constitution has already provided a ceiling, except that we have breached it. To the point that you have, very surprising, and I have not hidden my disgust about this to the president himself, either private or public, that to have somebody like Nana Akufo-Addo, with the background that we all sort of knew of him, and the death that he was bringing to the politics, to wake up to him defending over 100 ministers, over 120 ministers, in fact, was very shocking. So he is saying that, he says, it is my contention that apart from regional ministers, the number of central government ministers may not have to exceed 19, as contained in the Constitution. And that this means ministries should also not exceed 19. From his point of view, the Constitution's provision for cabinet ministers should be the limit.
That's what he's saying. And also I've read a statement by a veteran politician, a practical one indeed, Mr. Kojo Mpianim, former chief of staff of former President Kufuor, also saying that if you place that kind of limitation, you are preventing the president from perhaps exercising his office. That's also true, but I believe strongly, and if you compare the number of ministers all over the place, in other countries, a country of this size do not need that number.
Exactly.
The 19 is perfect. You see, and what is even more troubling, Samson, is that we create ministers for one role at 3 levels. Minister of State, a minister, 2 ministers, a deputy ministers, for the same kind of function. And one sits at the Jubilee House.
I think we had as many as, is it 4 for national security alone?
Exactly. You see, and this goes back to the notion of imperial presidency, where a president can create things at will. Because you don't have to go to parliament to seek permission. In fact, any president, if you sleep overnight and you wake up the next morning and feel like creating a ministry for your friend or girlfriend or whatever, nothing stops you from creating that ministry. Because you don't need parliamentary approval. So again, talking about controlling this, it means that in the new constitution that we should be looking forward to, there will be all kinds of checks and balances in a proper way to curtail what we call the imperial presidency. And I think that's the bottom line of what Mr. Chairman's Bonsu, the majority leader, is trying to tell us. So I do agree and based on our resources that we are even unable to manage, and even the way we are managing our resources is very much influenced by the governance structures we have.
Yeah.
When we're discussing the school feeding program, the whole notion of decentralizing management. Look, there's what we call the National Food Buffer Stock, right?
That's right.
It's a bureaucracy that waits for government to bring you millions of cedis to go and procure things to supply. Like Kofi Bentil said, why can't this be done at the assembly level? So the point is simply that there's an urgent need for serious reforms of our constitution, because first, I submit to you, the constitution was rushed. Certain things were not taken into account. It was written to satisfy or pacify a certain individual at the time.
Jerry Rawlings.
Jerry Rawlings, unfortunately, is gone. So we should go back and make sure we get the constitution that suits us, taking into account what I said earlier,
Yes.
our history, our culture, our traditions, to ensure that this constitution truly reflects the needs of our people.
Whilst he talks about the ministers who are actually not needed,
Not adding value,
helpful,
he says.
yes, not adding value. Well, people have sought to ask the question. Well, he himself is presiding over, this ministry that has been controversial. Anytime any president wants to introduce a minister of parliamentary affairs.
Yeah.
While it is important not to reduce the arguments, the debate to him, does he have the right, does he have the moral right to be able to talk about these things when he is actually adding up to the problem?
Samson, look, I think if the devil comes out to say, being a devil is no good, I'm giving it up, accept it.
Yes.
He is in the thick of things, like you rightly say. Maybe in the review we are talking about, we'd consider that there's no need for minister for parliamentary affairs. But you see, this comes as a result of the structure, because we have a few system of governance, partly parliamentary, partly presidential. And the president, by the constitution, is compelled to have majority of his ministers from within parliament. Again, blurring the role of parliament to be effective in checking the executive. So that these deficits are clear. And I think not just what Chairman Sambonsu has said, many other things have been said by all of you over the years. And this is the time for us to really put our minds together to get a better constitution for ourselves.
Do you subscribe to his proposition for the Westminster system? There are people who have said, let's do proportional representation also. He says, for example, that there is a nexus between the campaign expenditure and corruption, fueled by award of contracts. So when I read this, I had to pinch myself to be sure that it was
He's the one saying that.
he who was saying it. Literally agreeing to what we have always known, that the reason you have the inflated contracts, the kickbacks, the reason the contracts are given to party people so that they will now in turn sell the contract to another person and get a 10% is because of campaign financing. He says the Westminster system is the way to reduce this corruption.
You say yes or no? On one level, certainly the ability of the party in power to check its leader, like the Brits just did with Boris Johnson, may impress all of us as perhaps one effective way. I have no problem with that. But you see, this is where I had a difference with my brother here in our earlier conversation. It is not a matter of changing parties, because so far as I'm concerned, there's little difference, if any, between the NDC and the NPP. Because the system we have created is what they inherit. So far as they will come and inherit that system, their behavior will be almost they say. So talking about Chairman's point about monetizing our politics and the corruption and kickbacks, all the parties do that. You see, let us not mince our words.
Yeah. Yes.
These two parties, NDC and PP, they are both corrupt when they are in power.
That's it.
So if you chase out our good friend Mahama because he was corrupt, I'm sure somehow this person is also going to be chased out. So you bring him back, and it's the same system, there will be corruption.
But the citizens are now more engaging.
Well,
Citizens are far more engaging now.
Right.
They won't allow that nonsense. Like our contract, like they will not let the president sleep until he does something about this Northern Development Authority CEO and the Napaga and all those people.
Oh,
yes. So that is it. Citizens holding.
I agree,
president
and for me,
accountable.
that's again my point that
Yes.
citizens should rally together
Yes.
and find a way to pressure those who can kickstart the process of review of the Constitution to start. Because any democracy where citizens are dormant, and I think when the president took his oath, he made an interesting statement to that effect, that become participants, not spectators.
Yes.
Whenever we become just spectators, then your leaders will just take you for a ride. Okay? So I agree very strongly. And I think by and large, Ghanaian citizens are becoming more proactive, and the advocacy is getting bigger and bigger.
Professor Kwekwa Sari is asking that we have been talking. When are we going to do it? Shouldn't it be incremental? In 2011, 2012, we did the Constitution Review Commission process. You know, it's valued. The work it did is valued at $6.3 million.
Yes,
it's gathering dust.
Because Samson, I'm aware of that and have a copy of that report with our good friend Tubuga, Professor Tubuga being the Executive Secretary. I've gone through that report. The interesting thing is that even some of the key issues raised by citizens were rejected by the government of Yes. Okay? So it shows you that the politicians themselves, they seem to have a vested interest in the status quo. They do have. That clique, and they include the administrative elite also.
But the ones that they accepted in the white paper, if we had implemented even just a quarter, would have moved forward.
Well, they had opportunity to do so. Ask yourself, why didn't they do that? From the
Asari
Mahama
himself took them to court.
Yeah,
by
what
the
happened?
time the court was done, there wasn't much time. Yes. Yeah.
So as for the lamentations our good friend is referring to, we have become nation of lamenters. I agree. The lamentations are just too much. We need action. As civil society people,
the
actions we should take is the challenge. We need to take that to shake up the politicians, to sit straight and look into our eyes and tell us what they stand for. But this go and come, we vote you out 8 years, we vote you in 8 years, and we come and do the same kind of damage to this country. By the way, my final point. People forget that between 1972 and 78, we never went to the IMF for bailout. That's the only period in our national history. People forget. Who was in power then?
A champion.
Kutu Champon. You remember his program of Operation Feed Yourself?
Had a bit about it.
And when Professor Dai Mensah was referring to school gardening, during that period, here in Accra, people were growing their own food at their backyards. In that period, between 74 and 75, we exported rice to Burkina Faso. Tamale was known as the rice city, if you can remember that. So we have done it before. And when a champion declared Yentuya, the World Bank privately came and pleaded, pacified him with 1% interest on loans because of the fear that other developing countries, if they pick up his mantra of Yentuya, the bank will suffer. So I'm saying that there's a history we can go back. We don't need to be going back to this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And this is Newsfile. Is brought to you by Bank of Africa, strong as a group and close as a partner, MTN everywhere you go. Ashesi University, educating ethical and entrepreneurial leaders for Africa. Robert and Sons Optical Services, your comprehensive eye care services provider for 31 years. Waylead Properties, home is where one starts. Fanat, Ghana, think wood, think Fanat. And I'm now thinking whether I should get to Martin before I go to Kofi Bento. But I will take a break before I return. And Martin, on the issue that you have been very, heavy on corruption, this matter of the special prosecutor going to court to freeze Sir John's properties, confirm the freezing because he has already frozen them. One of the opposing side, Sir John's, people, and Nana Obribwain, who is the lawyer, who is also a deputy general secretary of the NPP, did an affidavit for the court, and he said, look, the special prosecutor is being a busybody. Do you know why? He says there are many people who are stealing from the state and they are alive. You should go after those people and leave the dead man alone. Actually, in the affidavit, they say that his uncle left him some gold, stuff. So he has the wherewithal to be able to do a few things. He said, they said this in the affidavit, that a good number of Ghanaians have raped and looted the resources of this country, with some still continuing to do so. This is the General Secretary, Deputy General Secretary of the party. With some still continuing to do so. Who are they that he's talking about? Who the SP has failed to crack the whip on and has rather embarked on the present venture, which is nothing less than witch hunting. And that the SP would be better off dealing with the suspicious amassing of wealth by these people that he is talking about. So even the people within the parties have a certain awareness, or beyond the awareness, they actually have facts. They know.
Yes.
And I brought this up to mention to you that I have just discovered that the thing we have been talking about, to be able to take, what do you call it? Unexplained wealth.
Unexplained wealth. Article 286.
The SP has a provision for that to help. And I can hope that this same court where they went, that court is like the court that deals with almost about 70% of the corruption cases, and is jailing people, and you have such a fair and fair judge in that court. So we can hope to see more. We'll be right back after this break. Right, so let me have Martin's perspective on these issues before we go to hear from Kofi Bento. Clement Akapam says that the relevant ministries this country actually needs are the Finance Ministry, the Justice Ministry, the Auditor General, Attorney General? The Auditor General, he means, I suspect, Natural Resources and Environment, Local Government, Tourism and Culture, that can be one ministry, Agriculture, Education and Sports, Information and Communication, and 10, Energy and Petroleum. That only 10, as far as he's concerned by his analysis, is what we need. We don't even need 19. Yes.
Okay. Yes. Well, what can we say? The bottom line, as long as it will help us to save the public purse, I'm for it. And this matter. Was it last year? Haruna also came up with his own number. I think he came up with about 64. That's Haruna Idrisu, the minority leader. Okay, so people have come with numbers, and it's good profits here. CDD earlier on in the 2000s, you had numbers. I have 88, around 80. That's the four numbers.
It was 80,
yes.
82.
CDD did a lot of work and complained. So we've had this conversation on and on and on. We've come full circle.
Right. I think Dr. Indum was promising about 40 or so, and then Imani was saying we needed 20.
Well, 20, well, looks
So is that right?
So we've come full circle. You remember when President Kufuor was appointing these people and we made noise, no, I'm in a hurry, you know? And then Mustafa Hamid came out and said the civil servants are incompetent. They failed us. They are not able to do their job. You check March 2017. Yes, when all these things came out. Now we've come full circle. We've come back to the point that we must reduce. Of course, we all know that if they hadn't had lost their seats in parliament, probably they wouldn't have reduced it because people advised him. He said, no, he would not listen. He would not listen. You see? And like they say, the fly that refuses advice follows the corpse into the grave. Today we are in the grave with the IMF.
Osei Mensah actually says that the Attorney General should not be the Minister for Justice.
Yes.
That's because mantra.
Yes, because over the years, I don't know how they can't come public and say it. But when you speak to them privately, they admit to you.
Yes.
For a number of attorney generals I have interacted with, they tell you, I can't prosecute this person.
Excellent.
It just won't work.
Excellent.
I sit with them in cabinet.
That's right.
How do you expect me to prosecute them?
Excellent. Good. Yes. So that's how come we brought our special prosecutor, which still falls short of it. So now that we've seen that, yes, we will keep special prosecutor, but let's go back to it, that let's decouple them. In the First Republic, we decoupled them. Yes, when you check the Constitution Review Commission report, it tells you that in the First Republic, the office of the Attorney General was different from the office of Minister of Justice. And that's us, Ghana. You take 2 steps forward and then 4 backwards. That's just us. Yeah, it's in there. That in the First Republic, we had the office of the Attorney General being separate from the office of Minister of Justice. And the UK, of course, we copied from them. They are doing it. So why don't we just go back to it? Sankofa. So on the matter of Attorney General being decoupled, I perfectly agree. We'll keep special prosecutor is doing a good job, but we need more hands. Because you see, Sam, the plain truth is that, you know, these criminals are very tough-skinned, very tough-skinned. They dig in their heels. You think, oh, you come and talk once and they will leave. No, they scheme to increase, find ways to outwit you. Because they tell you it's a mafia game. All right, so let's get more hands, decouple the office of the Attorney General from the Minister of Justice. Then 2, Sam, you see, plain truth, we need the system to work. When we reduce the numbers and we don't get the systems to work, we will not do much. We will not do much because you just read from the court, the judgment of the court, where Ubri Buahin is telling the court that there are other people currently stealing. And some, you and I know some of them. Look, there are stories. Look, I can show you there's a part of Accra where you go. Within 2 years, a Minister of State has bought 4 houses straight. 4 houses, a chain. This is somebody, a whistleblower took me there. And I was like, okay, I'll wait for the president to take action or special prosecutor to take action on this Northern Development Authority case first before we go there. The minister has bought 4 houses. Look, bought his house, bought his neighbor out, the next neighbor, and the next. Prime area in Accra. And you look at the figures involved, and you're like, Master, in 10 years, your salary can never buy these 4 houses.
So unexplained wealth is the best way to go. Yes. Because you may not be able to catch the person stealing.
Yes, we'll go to Shraj. We will go to Shraj with him. I just want to see the end of this Northern Development Authority case, okay?
That seems to be very close.
Yes. You're so angry about it.
So look at the 4. Article 286 clause 4. Any property or assets acquired by a public officer after the initial declaration required by clause 1 of this article, and which is not reasonably attributable to income, gift, loan, inheritance, or any other reasonable source, shall be deemed to have been acquired in contravention of this Constitution. And Shiraj has the mandate. You remember during the Rawlings regime, there was this, is it I.K. Mafu? He was a minister for lands and natural resources. He bought property in the name of his son, Ajay Mafu.
Ajay Mafu.
Yes.
Brother of
Shiraj
Mafu.
Brother. Oh, okay. Well, you see. So,
except that Shraj doesn't have the regulations, the rules that will empower it to activate this law.
Well, it's a constitutional provision. They can just implement it. They say confiscate. So if they finish and say you are indicted, I agree, Sam. We can help Shraj maybe push that they should come out with the regulations. But Shraj shouldn't sit on his hands. just because the regulations are not yet in. And Shraj has been doing well. From time to time, they sue Attorney General and win. You remember this case Tadiosori did, the one at Amils wrote to Shraj to investigate the Mabe and Johnson case. Yes, and then Baba Kamara said he couldn't be investigated because he wasn't a public officer. Yeah. Tadiosori led Shraj to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said no, they can investigate you as a private person. Yes, and we all know what happened to the Mabe and Johnson case. So please, Shraj, look, let's implement Article 2886 clause 4 that once the money, the income, and everything is beyond the person's means, it should be confiscated. And this is not the first time. I always mention the Jage Commission. Always mention Jage Commission. Okay, how Kwame Nkrumah's ministers were hauled before the commission, and those who couldn't account for the properties and all that, those properties were taken. Yeah, so for that one, I support. Sam, apart from that, the next one that I'm looking at is that, but let's put this in context before I come to the issue of ministers being appointed from Parliament. From the way Chairman Sabonsu's statement, I suppose he knows it very well. From Article 78, the Constitution is giving the President a sort of a blank check. It says in Clause 2, 78.2, it says, the President shall appoint such number of ministers of state as may be necessary for the efficient running of the state. So if 76.1 says that there should be a cabinet which is not more than 19, and 78.2 says appoint such as are necessary, it means that beyond the cabinet there can be more ministers. So perhaps as part of the constitutional review, then we'll put an upper limit and remove the 78.2. Good. Yeah, so now on the matter of parliamentarians being ministers, we know that, look, that's been the biggest problem in this our parliament of the Fourth Republic. It's weakened parliament. Weakened parliament because the parliamentarians who belong to the president's party usually would not want to oppose the government. They want to support. And in natural fact, they behave in a way as to catch the president's eye. They want ministerial appointments. So we have to, from my experience, make sure that we go back to the Third Republic, where when you're a minister of state, you are not a member of parliament. Yes, people will quickly say, oh, Liman's budget was thrown out. But in life, when we fail, don't we try again?
Try again.
Don't we try again? 1979, that's at least 42, 43 years. Is that also? Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So we can try again. So I'm all in support of us decoupling ministers of state from being MPs. So that when a man goes to parliament as an MP, he wants to do his best, so that rather in criticizing and holding government to account, he would rather be seen to be a better citizen. But this time, Prof, you mentioned our values. Ghana, what are our values? Number 1 value is to get rich. Number 2 value, get rich. Number 3, get rich anyhow. You see, so when that is the system, the man wants to catch the president's eye. He doesn't want to reveal anything. He doesn't want to punch loopholes. He wants to be minister. Okay, and if it's minister, he gets all the V8s and all that. So Sam, for me, Chairman Sabonsu's call for the reforms, I support. We should decouple. Then you come to the judiciary. Oh, and by the way, before we delve further into the judiciary, the last time they did something that really gladdened my heart. They've come out with a statement that the ex gratia, they don't get any ex gratia. That's very important. So for viewers,
it's normally arrears.
Yes, yes. So it's good because it was quite tacky. The last time we were discussing it, I was like, are they part? Are they not part? But they've clarified that they don't get ex gratia. Okay, so they are out, and that restores some confidence in the judiciary. That's very good. All right. So apart from that, you look at the Electoral Commission. So judiciary, let's finish up on it. Appointment of the Chief Justice and members of the Superior Court of Judicature. I think we want to see a way of, once again, getting them more independence. The fact that in most places in the world, the president, appoints CJ, doesn't mean that we should continue here. Prof, you have said our values. Our values. What are our values? Currently in our system, people would want to see the judiciary far more independent. So if we have to cut the umbilical cord, that next time the president should not appoint a chief justice, so be it. It looks like that is what we need. in our current circumstances, right? So we are not bound to say that, oh, in the UK, the, what do you call it, Prime Minister has a hand in appointment of the Chief Justice and all that, the Queen. No, we are not bound. Or in the US, we are not bound. We can chart a course for ourselves that we will, in the amendment, the reforms, that the Chief Justice and the members of the Supreme Court are not appointed by the President. Let the Judicial Council do so. And of course, to the membership of the Judicial Council itself, we'll look at it and remove the President's control. Because until we do some of this, like you keep saying, the imperial President, his hands are everywhere. Everywhere. And so far, apart from, like I keep saying, Atta Mills, who came and was quite seen as quite an honest man, the rest have not had any good standings in our society. So we are always looking at them with suspicion and all that. So it doesn't give any confidence in our system. Right. So for me, the judiciary, I want to see the Supreme Court and Chief Justice being appointed through the Judicial Council without the President, so that they can get through independence. Independence as understood by the common man. Otherwise, this kind of independence is a bit mythical. Yes, it's, you know. Okay, now, so quite apart from that, what else should we look at? The EC. I remember in 2016, when we were getting ready to boot out Mama, Gabi came out with a very brilliant idea, Gabi Ochidako. He said, oh, for the appointment of the EC, the civil society organization should be involved. There should be an open public interview where a few civil society organizations will do the nominations. Then there will be a public interview with a very expert panel. Then they will interview the candidates one by one, and the citizens will have there will be transparency, they will see, so that the best is chosen, right? So that means that one too, let's carry it, because after all, Gabi supports it, I support, that's what we supported. There's no reason for us to change now, so that we amend the constitution in that regard, because the EC, you know, appointment of the EC is going to be turning going into the future.
I was laughing because you said Gavi so far. Gavi is not in government. He doesn't hold a public office.
Oh, but we all know that a lot stops on his desk. Yes, he controls a lot in fact. Right. Yeah, so there are still quite a number, you know, there are other independent constitutional bodies and so in one word, Sam, it's very clear that look, we need constitutional reforms. I like how Prof put it, very urgent. And so if we don't get any reforms before President Akufo-Addo leaves, then it means that we will call his regime the lost decade. That would be the lost decade.
Anyway,
so let's do something.
He used to talk about overhauling the constitution. I hope that he's still interested in that. I think, is it Professor Kukwasari who is saying that, Martin, Article 78 is not a blank check. Parliament is not obliged to approve everyone who is nominated as a minister. Nothing stops Parliament from saying the pairs can only support 20 ministers. The president is too powerful because those who are to act as a check on his powers have abdicated. This includes Parliament, the courts, and sadly, even the media. Okay, so we are all guilty, but we should begin to get our loins and ensure that the right things are done. Otherwise, they'll continue to lead us to the IMF, and we continue to be poor whilst they get the best of life. And you know a president's life. Once they are president, they will live on their salary forever until they die, after they have, as it were, left office. Let's go to Kofi Bento. Yes, Kofi, Imani, particularly led by yourself, you had been saying for a long time that the bloatedness is too much, and we can do with, is it 20 ministers?
20. And I have a confession here. So we did all kinds, and this is many years ago, analysis and things, and came to 20, that it's possible to run the country with 20. That was before I saw the constitutional provision on 19. So that's a confession. And it therefore resonated with me that, look, there is wisdom in this thing. Then there is a 78. By the way, I do believe that the issue of Article 19 is a matter of interpretation. And I think that in the intendment of the framers of the Constitution, they believe that given that we have chief directors and whatever, you could run this country with 19 ministers, and that they all must be in cabinet. Then you have the regional ministers. Okay, so the 78 there, I think is a conflict because I think the president is being given some room, and it does not have to be ministers. Then you have the situation of having to pick ministers from parliament. Kwekwaza made a brilliant suggestion that you can pick ministers of state. So, for instance, if you want to have 20 ministers and 50% have to be in parliament, pick your 20 ministers out of parliament and pick ministers of state and attach them to the ministries. They are attached there as ministers, but in reality, they don't have any real function, just to satisfy the constitution. The point must, however, be made that let us commend Honorable Osechi Mensah-Bonsu for speaking what he believes in. And even though he's in power, like you said, he's part of the problem in a sense because there is absolutely no reason why you must have a ministry for parliamentary affairs. He has had the courage to come out and speak it. But let us also know that crisis gives clarity. And when somebody's clarity comes from crisis, we need to appreciate him, but also appreciate that you should never let that crisis go to waste. I think we should stop. I have stopped the lamentation and I'm looking straight for solutions. So I'm going to go ahead and say, for instance, we don't need an attorney general. That the concept, we don't have time to go into it, but the concept is anachronistic, it's gone. What we need is a legal counsel for government who should sit in Flagstaff House. And then we need to maintain the office of the special prosecutor to do prosecutions. And that person must not be the government's lawyer like the attorney general. We don't need that one. And so many other ministers that we don't need. Now, we need to have the CSO coalition, which we've now formed. And by the way, I started talking to CDD more than a year ago. And I've made the point elsewhere that every election, general election that we have is a referendum. What we need to do is to get one or two of the entrenched provisions questions on each general election.
Good point.
And vote over them.
Okay.
And I think that the CSO coalition we have now must push for at least 2 questions to go onto the 2024 general election and let us start this constitutional review process. We've talked too much about it. Correct. It is killing us. And listen, we are risking this republic. If you have a situation where the systems don't work, Atamos did his best, he spent $6 million, we had the Constitutional Review Commission, nothing happened, we are all pushing, nothing seems to be happening, you are going to get a bursting of the seams. Something is going to give. So I am saying, let us move to do the reforms. Look, I have a list of things that we could be talking about, but definitely we don't need more than 20 ministers. I also think that we must stop the EC from expanding our parliament. It is totally unconscionable for a poor country like us to have 275 parliamentarians, more than half of whom are basically functors. They don't really do anything.
That's right.
I do believe that we have today 16 regions. Okay, I can advance a clear argument that we need only 2 parliamentarians per region and that there should be 2 others who are appointed by district chief executives. And I don't have the time to go into that. But the point is, parliament is for lawmaking. And we have a situation where today in our parliament, you don't need to have proficiency in English to be a parliamentarian. Meanwhile, you are going to have to make laws, read laws in English. And at least if you are going to make good laws, you need to have a sense of understanding of philosophy. I don't know how you're going to do that, without all that. So there are a lot of things we need to do. Concerning the ministers coming out of parliament, for instance, it doesn't make any sense. And the use of the Liman, situation that they threw his budget out, and that is why we have to do that, is totally convex. It is opposite what, should be. The purpose of parliament is to hold the executive to check. So if the budget was wrong, they should throw it out.
Even this parliament that is divided in the middle, so to speak, can you imagine that it is possible of using the power of impeachment? Can you imagine that it will be able to do so?
It's far-fetched, but it should be possible. It should be possible because look, we have had situations. Look, we were all here, like Marty was saying. We got on the streets and basically pushed President Mahama out. And some people were saying this is the worst that can happen. Okay, now we have come back to say, well, there's a lower bottom that we can go to. There is a time can come. Look, all law is about restriction of power.
All right.
So those who think that the president's hand is not tied, the purpose of law is to tie your hands.
Okay.
So you can do whatever you want.
Hold on. I want you to listen to the president briefly. Just listen to him.
These solemn pledges to you, the people of Ghana. I make these solemn pledges to you, the people of Ghana. To all those who have been dismayed by the level of corruption under this NDC government, I ask for your vote. I am committed to fighting corruption vigorously, and I shall exact the same high standards for members of my government as I've set for myself. I pledge that an Akufo-Addo government, which will be composed of a competent, dynamic team of men and women, will protect the public purse and ensure value for money in all financial transactions for the nation.
Kofi, has he kept this promise?
Not. Absolutely not. And you know, there is the thing about efforts. If you give it a good shot and you miss, we will know you gave it a good shot and you missed. Unfortunately, we don't even see the effort. And many people will tell you that it seems like the president has just checked out. I say this with a heavy heart, but the truth of the matter is that we have had enough time. And in the beginning stages, we all gave him the benefit of the doubt. We all, cut him a lot of slack. You talk about his 120 ministers, and what is the performance we have seen? I remember also bringing that up. It says, wait and see how it's going to turn out. We have had enough time, and on that matter, the jury is out. There is, a lot of, stuff going on, which makes people believe that the corruption today is worse than what we threw out. The waste today is worse.
Thank you.
Really
Thank you. Thank you so very much. I'll give just a minute to Professor Baffour Adjumandua to say something in a minute, then we close the program.
Well, Samson, I think for all that we have discussed today, one thing we should not forget, and we haven't even discussed it, is what I call the attitudinal change that is needed, the mindset of Ghanaians. And here, I'm not excluding us.
Yes.
The mindset, a mindset, as you rightly said, which is based on making money, which in itself also continues to undermine the effectiveness of governance. So, that for me is the next greatest. So even if we are going to reform the constitution, we should also be looking at our educational system. What are we teaching our kids from the kindergarten all the way to the senior school level? Patriotism, nationalism, these elements, ethics, ethical behavior. We cannot rely on the churches to do this because they are perhaps the most unethical that I can think of. So the challenge is not just changing governments and also not just changing the constitution. It should come with additional changes in the mindset of Ghanaians towards the right things.
Thank you so very much. Professor Baffour Adjumandua is former UN governance advisor. Martin Pebu is a lawyer and rights activist. Presently, he wants something to be done about Northern Development Authority forgery that was going to cost the country 5 million Ghana cedis that the president seems to keep a blind eye to. Kofi Bento is lawyer and senior vice president Imani Africa, and we also had Kofi Asare, executive director, Africa Education Watch. My outfit, as always, is by Habil Scooter. You can find them at Ajiringano Gate, East Legon, and on the number 0200 84 1988. And your election headquarters will continue the all-day coverage of the NPP's national officers' elections going on at the Accra Sports Stadium. And MFA Apal, that's your power woman on the screens, will tell us more about that. So I hand over to her.
We're right back after this, and this is your election headquarters. Please stay.